Okay, welcome. The world's on fire. Tomorrow, we're going to take a very detailed look. By the way, Friday, 15 July, year of our Lord 2022, you're in Battleground. One of the things that's going to drive the 2022 elections is economy, inflation, all of it, but also geopolitics. The Joe Biden, the illegitimate usurper, is over in Saudi Arabia, even as we speak, humiliating the United States, kowtowing, prostrating himself in front of the to the royal house of Saud, Arab tyrants, right? That we are now making hundreds of billions of dollars because of Biden's energy policy in this kind of green. And thank God for Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin today killed this Build Back whatever broke. They were trying to put it through, which is nothing more than another attempt to ram through this radical spending plan around the Green New Deal, which would have brought this country to its knees, or more to its knees than it already is. We got a lot going on. We're going to go to The Hague in a moment to Micahel, the great combat correspondent, is there on the scene. We also got Jeff Brain from Cloud Hub. They're all working with these farmers, reporting on this better than anybody in the world. But I want to start with our own Ben Harnwell in Rome. Ben, last time we left you, you were in front of the presidential palace in Rome. Give us a sense, give context. We're going to talk about the Dutch farmers in a second and the situation they've got, which is really driven by energy and the Green New Deal and sustainability. Tell us what happened today in Europe as this Ukraine situation is bringing to a head all of the problems with the governments in Europe, and all of them are going to fall. I've said this for a while. You and I have talked about this for months now. We said all these governments are going to fall because the people are not going to put up with this. They're not going to put up with the funneling of hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine just for the war, this border conflict they got with the Russians that's being cycled back out. A bunch of it's being skimmed by the corrupt oligarchs in Ukraine. And the EU's already reported that it's funneling weapons back to the gangs and terrorists back in Western Europe and making people more unsafe. Now we have this huge crisis with natural gas and energy. Ben Harnwell, put it in perspective.
Good evening, Steve. Well, I don't quite know the best metaphor to describe what's going on in Italy over the last 24 hours, whether to call it theatre or ballet, or to call it gamesmanship or brinkmanship. The best metaphor, I think, to describe it is to say that the political tectonic plates are shifting. That's the best way of describing it. They're moving slowly right now. The interesting thing here is to look at the moves of the person who's really got the strings in his hand, and that is Giuseppe Conte, formerly Prime Minister, but now member of the coalition led by the former European Central Bank President Mario Draghi. Now, Giuseppe Conte, there's some bad blood between him and Draghi anyway, so there's a level of personal animosity, but that's not what's going on right now. The thing to remember about the party that Giuseppe Conte leads, the five-star movement, is that it is in its most pure elemental essence an opportunistic party. That's why Conte's maneuvers now are so interesting to look at. Now, I've never really rated this guy very much, I have to say. What he's been saying and doing over the last 48 hours has started to impress me. What he's doing is that he's positioning his party, which it still is, the largest political party after the last Italian elections 4.5 years ago. But its popularity is just absolutely, it's in the toilet. The party doesn't really have the popular appeal that it had when it did so well in the elections. So the first thing to note about his maneuvers is that whatever he's doing and saying, he does not want to bring about fresh elections. So what is he doing and why is he doing it? What do I mean when I talk about the political plate tectonics shifting? Giuseppe Conte has realized and has the ability to do something that few others in Italian politics either have seen or is able to act on. And that is, he knows what's coming in autumn. He knows the absolute crisis with inflation, with food, with fuel that's coming. And he is maneuvering his party. Now, there must be elections in Italy anyway in spring next year, at the end of the closure of the current parliamentary mandate. What he's trying to do, Steve, is maneuver his party to be the major principal force to capture all of the dissatisfaction caused by Mario Draghi's insane pro-Ukraine policy.
But here's what it is. They want to avoid, just like Macron would have liked to have done it, they want to avoid voters right now, just like the Democrats want to do it. All the globalists do not want to have to be held accountable at the ballot box right now with the people. We got a massive problem in Germany today. They're talking about dramatic things they're going to have to do with this natural gas. You hear it. They're looking for votes of confidence in some of the Baltic nations because of this Ukraine policy. It's spreading all over Europe. Hang right there for a second, Ben. I want to go to the guys in the Netherlands. I want to start with our own Micahel Jan there at The Hague outside the King's Palace. Michael, you called this one several weeks ago when you left basically southern Mexico, the Darien Gap, the frontline nations. You said this is the next hot spot. I got to get off of the Rio Grande. As hot as that is, I got to get to this farmers' revolt. This is starting to metastasize down to Germany. It's starting to metastasize to Italy. Get us up to date on what's happened in the last day, sir.
Well, Steve, as you know, this is big. This is big news. This is like Global 1848 again. And by the way, you seem to be quite popular here because the last couple of shows we did together were on state-sponsored television yesterday, going after you and Tucker Carlson and me. That's how afraid these globalist clowns are. They're quite afraid of the reporting and the things that are coming out on your program. But the bottom line is that the farmer revolt appears to be growing. The Germans have gotten involved. Polish farmers have been on video saying that they're joining in solidarity, as it were, with Dutch farmers. Yesterday, German and Dutch farmers closed parts of the border and closed some immigration stations as well. I'm in front of the King's Palace for a specific reason. He happens to be a vax pusher, and his wife, the Queen, Maxima, has been pushing transhumanism in elementary schools. So it's a pretty big deal. They are quite afraid. They see the farmers are rising up. Now, there are parts of Netherlands who still are sleeping and don't seem to realize what's going on. Meanwhile, the farmers, of course, they're growing. It's clearly growing. They've been flying their flags upside down, just as we do. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go out with the farmers today. That's what I had scheduled to do. But I ended up in the Parliament all day with one of the members of Parliament talking about things that are going on here, and it was quite. And he actually follows you, by the way, interestingly enough. And so it's growing, and the farmers realize they can't negotiate. Most of the farmers realize that. It's like negotiating with a bank robber. They realize that negotiation is just delaying your death. And so they're making a final stand. Obviously, they're very well aware of what happened in Sri Lanka. Of course, the Sri Lankans, by the time they stood up, it was too late. I mean, the time to stand up is before you're hungry. Right?
Okay.
Because after you're hungry, everything's lost.
Yeah, but hang on one second. For our audience, and maybe people coming late to this story, what is this revolt about? The farmers are the back. Farmers have been in Netherlands for 2,000 years. The dikes you've got to keep they've taken back from the sea what have been underwater. They did all the dikes. They've reclaimed land. They're on a per acre efficiency. They're actually more or is almost as productive as American farmers. What is the heart of this problem? And when you say, hey, the guys in Sri Lanka were awakened too late to it, the farmers there, be specific. What is this fight? What does it get down to? What is the core of it? What is it about? And why do farmers, who are normally the most patriotic, decent, hardworking people, why are they in open revolt against their government and their king?
Well, the World Economic Forum, the WEF, this king eats out of their hand, as does the Prime Minister, Mark Rutte. And so they're making a naked stab to take the land from the farmers and make what's called Tri-State City. Tri-State City will be this mega city proposed between the Dutch and the Belgian and the German borders, actually. So taking parts of all three states. That's why it's called Tri-State City. So they want to take all of the food production from these incredible farmers and then control the food production and the food distribution. So it's Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has invested $600 million in these picnic food distribution centers, one of which burned. Our last show that I did with you was in front of one that had just burned down the night before, some days ago now. And so mysteriously burned down, actually. And so, yeah, the farmers are, I don't know why that burned down. I have no idea. And so separately, the farmers are fighting back, and they don't want to lose their land. Of course, the Frisian farmers, the old Vikings, they are the beating heart of this country, right? So ripping them off of their land is a cultural, it's a cultural attack, which, as you know, the cultural Marxists, this is what they do, Steve. You talk about this all the time. They're doing basically what you've been talking about for years. And when I say they, I mean the WEF, the WEF, they call it the WEF here. They are trying to take the land, trying to take control. This is the number 2 food exporter in the world in dollars. And this is an ideal target to take out. So right now, Netherlands is a huge food exporter, but at this rate, they'll end up being a food importer.
But hang on. But what's the logic? What would be the logic of taking away the most productive farmers in the world that the people in the Netherlands could see as a play? Is it an eminent domain issue, or is it get to the Green New Deal that they think their farming techniques are wrong and they know they won't change?
Well, the excuse they use is, that some nitrogen products, basically the fertilizer is poison, right? That's the excuse they use. So why would you take the most efficient farmers in the world and shut down their farmland so that somebody else, perhaps in India, can produce that same amount of food, right? Which is, at this rate, there's going to be a lot fewer mouths to feed because we're going into a global famine. And so, but the bottom line is they want to shut these farmers down completely. And this would be the last farmers in the world you would shut down. But, they want to push the WEF, the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab basically is he's basically the master of this king. And that's one of his palaces behind me. And the Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, and Trudeau. I mean, it's all part of the same little cabal, right? They're stealing the land from the farmers. They are in the process of doing it even as we speak. And the farmers are fighting back. That's what they know. So they want to take these farmers, rip them off of their land, steal the land, and then Netherlands. A lot of the Dutch are still asleep about it. The farmers are not. By the way, these farmers in Netherlands are highly cognizant that Klaus Schwab is behind this. They use the name.
Is this revolt growing? Is it growing? You say people in Netherlands ain't that big a country. I know it's got controlled media by the state. Is the revolt growing? Is it getting support by the urban dwellers, the people that are long-term patriots that just haven't moved there, but long-term patriots? And you said that Tucker Carlson and the War Room was attacked. They used clips from the War Room. Your interview. What is the central government-owned media, TV stations saying about what we're saying?
I'll send it to you after the show. But yeah, they were basically saying we're far right. Basically the same thing that they accuse you of constantly, and it's completely wrong, of course, that we're far right and that we're dangerous and this is a danger for the Netherlands, of course, which is completely untrue. It's an amazing. Several Dutch people sent it to me today because my photo was on it along with you on this program. And so they obviously watched the War Room. Actually, again, I want to say it again. You're very popular here. You're very well known in Netherlands. When I came on your show before here, I get a bunch of messages that people just saw me. The member of parliament that I spent most of the day with today watches your show. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So you have an actual direct impact here, information wise. So, these guys behind me are going to see this program, probably watching it right now. And so, it's a big, they're afraid. The globalists are afraid. They're clearly, but like you said before, and you were talking about before we went on, this energy issue could make all this other major issues like food second tier, because that energy is a kill shot for the food and everything else suddenly. So that's, talking with a member of parliament today and other Dutch people, a lot of them don't actually understand how important that Nord Stream 1 is, and the other LNG issues, the natural gas issues that we've had in Texas on the exports. They don't realize that they may have just gotten shot in the heart. But they're about to find out here in the next 10 days or so. We'll find out soon.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, just hang on 1 second. Let me bring Jeff Brain into the conversation from Cloud Hub. Can we play? Let's go ahead and play. We've got a clip that Jeff has given us about some things he's working on. Let's go ahead and play it.
I believe then that nonviolence is the universal answer to injustice and oppression.
Very definitely. very definite. I feel that nonviolence, organized nonviolent resistance is the most powerful weapon that oppressed people can use in breaking loose from the bondage of oppression. Nonviolent resistance does resist. It is dynamically active. It is passive physically, but it is strongly active spiritually. I admire freedom fighters wherever they are.
Enough is enough. We're going Dutch.
Okay, Jeff Brands, a very moving video. Obviously, it's got the Dutch farmers, but it's got other protests that have come up in the last 6 months to a year. Tell us exactly what is this, the Dutch Lions? What are you working on, and what does this have to do with this great fight that the Dutch farmers are putting up right now, sir?
Well, what we've watched over the last couple of years is what they do. We saw it with Canada, Australia. You know, when people rise up, they try and, you know, convince us that they're violent, they're crazy. And what I reached out to the Dutch farmers about, because I helped the Canadians, was to tell them, listen, you need to we need to show support all over the world for what you're doing. The battle right now is happening in your land, but next week it might be somewhere else, and we can't let them, you know, separate us from each other. We all have to show a worldwide support. We all have to come together, because freedom everywhere is under attack. You know, we're in a battle. It really is an eternal battle of good versus evil. What the commentator before me talked about with the World Economic Forum and the taking of the land and trying to build a tri-city, you know, and take these people off the land. I've talked to these farmers. Families have owned this land for hundreds of years, and you know, it's awful what's happening, and we as a world that supports freedom have to stand up. And they're having a big rally July 23rd at noon in Amsterdam, noon their time, and what we want to show is their support in the United States. We would encourage people to share the Holland flag, but also people in Australia, also people in Italy, Brazil, France, Canada, all over the world. We need to show our support for what's happening to the Dutch farmers, because we're next.
Very, very, very powerful. Would you summarize it? I always ask people, what do you think this fight is really about? And what do you think the Dutch farmers and the people that are running Dutch media that are attacking us nonstop for doing exactly what you're starting to do, which is to say you're not alone. There's other populists and nationalists throughout the world and lovers of freedom and liberty that support you, and we're being attacked viciously and nonstop. So in your mind, what do you think this fight is about, and what do you think the Dutch people and the Dutch farmers think it's about?
Well, I think they have a very good sense of what it's about. They very clearly talk about World Economic Forum, and and where the power is. So what has happened is a group of leaders, for whatever reason, have decided that they should be in control. They're elitists, actually, and they should be in control of what's happening to the citizens of the world. And they want us to just go and align up, and be good sheep. I actually think that they've gone too far. And what you see happening in Holland, and you see now starting to happen in Italy and Germany and Poland and Brazil and Australia, we're going to see the biggest push for freedom, individual freedom around the world that we've ever seen before. And we have the tools to do it because we can connect like this, through the internet with each other. And they can no longer have the control. It's all about control. We see the food plants being burnt in the United States. We've never seen that before. You see things happening. They're not happening by accident. It's all about taking control. And we have to stand up, like you said, all together because it affects us all. All good people around the world have to stand up for freedom.
Jeff, just hang over a second. Let me go back to Micahel Jan in The Hague outside the King's Palace. Micahel, do the commentators and the globalists and the elites in Holland, are they upset that this has now become an international movement, that the world, the freedom fighters and sovereigntists and the populist economic nationalists throughout the world, as Ben Harnwell has connected all the dots from Sri Lanka to Ecuador to Holland, that are they getting concerned that this is getting now an international exposure?
Very concerned. And in that excellent video that you just showed, notice that the Dutch flags are upside down, by the way. Instead of red, white, and blue, the way it normally flies, it's inverted, blue, white, and red. And so, they do the same with their flag. It's a sign of distress, right? And so, yeah, they're very concerned. In fact, numerous members of Parliament want to go on War Room because they just saw what you just did with the first 2 or 3 interviews that we did. You just wormholed around them and you kicked the government here. So, I mean, the international press that you just specifically gave them, Steve, and everybody noticed that what War Room just did, because the conservatives here, the people that are not globalists and are fighting back, they are not able to get on the media here. They're just completely shut down. They cancel them just when they cancel in the United States. And War Room came in and kicked this king right in the leg. And here's police here. Let's see what happens. And so, yeah, very interesting things happening. Yeah.
Micahel, hang on for 1 second. I'm going to go back to Jeff Brand. You stay right there. And if you start to get arrested, shout, and we'll cut the camera back onto you. Jeff, there's a big rally on the 23rd. That's when it's all coming to a head, at least for this phase of it. Walk people through what Cloud Hub are doing. You've had this tremendous interconnectivity. You've been doing a great job here in the States on a state-by-state basis. Walk through what you guys are doing and how can people participate.
Sure. Cloud Hub is about allowing people concerned about issues to come together, work together, and address those issues. We give them all the tools they need. We were able to help the Canadian truckers during a truck convoy. We helped them raise some money, help them organize, and that's why I reached out to the Dutch farmers to help them as well. And we're here, that's what our platform does. All the different platforms are different, and that's what we do. We're all about, changing society and lives and humanity for good, and giving people the tools to be able to address the issues, whether that's what happened in our children's school or what's happening in our community or what's happening at our national level in Washington, D.C.
Jeff, how do people get to Cloud Hub to become part of this and to find out more about the Dutch farmers?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Go to www.cloudhub.com. We have groups, we've got channels, we've got discussion rooms. We even have virtual events. We can handle up to 100,000 people per event, where you can get your message out. That's what we need, right? The ability to all communicate throughout the world with each other. It's one, group of people all fighting for freedom, and that's what we're here to support.
Jeff Brand, CEO, founder of Cloud Hub, thank you very much, and thank you for putting your shoulder to the wheel here to help the Dutch farmers.
Thank you, Steve.
The Dutch farmers fight. The Dutch farmers' fight is our fight. Let me go back to Ben Harnwell. By the way, I want Micahel Jan to stay through the break, and Ben also. Ben, you've connected so many dots. At the core of it, Greta Thunberg, the high priestess of the Gaia Earth Mother cult that is climate change and global warming, whatever they call it this week. This is about the peasants, the serfs, the farmers telling the masters that we don't believe in your religion and we're not going to practice your religion. We think your religion is phony. We think your religion is causing irreparable harm, not to just our own personal property and our own communities, our own families, but to the nation overall. Give me 30 seconds before you go to break, Ben Harnwell.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. But it's not due to the fruits of reflection and political theorizing. It's more direct, that people are feeling the incompetence of our sociopathic overlords in their pockets. They don't have money. That is what is driving the outrage.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. I had to get sociopathic overlords in there in the first half of the show, and only Ben Harnwell can deliver that. Okay, short commercial break. Harnwell in Rome, Jan in The Hague, Frank Gaffney here in the nation's capital. We're going to talk about how to win the long war. Also going to go back to Micahel Jan for closing thoughts, analysis, and commentary about the farmers. Be back in the war room in just a second.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. Micahel Jan talked about the reach we're getting in the Holland and the other Low Countries. I want to thank also, I did this the last hour, but I want to thank, in Scotland, we have a big crew too that watches. I know, even though Scotland's got a lot of, I would say not conservatives now, but the folks sent me the shirt from the British Open, from the Open Championship held in St. Andrews Day, the 150th. They sent a black shirt, which I will be wearing over the weekend. I want to thank everybody for doing that. Tomorrow, in fact, we have Ben Harnwell is going to join me again with Jerome Revere. Jerome is a former member of Front National. He's National Rally. He's part of the Morris party now. He is a senior member of the European Parliament. We're going to be talking about the economists, how to win the long war. The Economist has one way to do it, and that is to continue to supply the Ukrainian military and get into a shooting war with Russia, drive them out of eastern Ukraine, and degrade the Soviet military, the Russian military. We don't quite think that's a plan, and we're going to talk about that in detail tomorrow. Before I go back to Micahel Jan, I got Frank Gaffney who's going to join us in a moment. Micahel Jan is outside. He's at The Hague, outside the King's Palace. We're going to go there in a moment. But Ben, today, humiliation. Joe Biden goes, and the illegitimate Biden regime goes to Saudi Arabia, prostrates himself in front of the royal house of Saud, kowtows to him. The most humiliating, he did this stupid fist bump that went all over the world. It was the Mac Daddy on Drudge and Daily Mail, all of it, just another humiliation for the United States. But are people, he's there because of the oil situation. They will not get their hands around. America is sitting on 3 Saudi Arabias, one in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and New York, and part of Ohio, the other in Alaska, and the other down in the Permian Basin. We have three Saudi Arabias that divine providence is deemed in the territory of the United States. And yet we go to Caracas and to Tehran and to Riyadh and essentially to Moscow to beg people, and of course Qatar, every bad actor in the world, to beg them to pump more. I know there's Ukraine fatigue right now in among the people, not the elites in Europe. Get me up to speed on that, particularly what happened in Estonia today.
Well, going first to the kingdom, my first reflection on this, Steve, is you remember when the whole American media had a collective meltdown when Donald Trump indicated that he trusted Russian intelligence over that of US intelligence. I couldn't help but remember the whole thing because it was dominated the press for weeks. The CIA and the State Department both say that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, gave the order for the execution of Kamal Khashoggi, right? MBS says he'll take responsibility because he's top of the apex, but he didn't give the order. Now, I would like to see resolved this situation. I would like to see a journalist ask President Biden today, whether he trusts the CIA or whether he's taking MBS's word that he's not responsible for this. Let's put the phony, synthetic, fake outrage that we're all subjected to ad nauseum into practice now.
Yeah.
Does the President of the United States sit down and deal with murderers, or does he not?
But I would, and by the way, House of Saw is best again. I would make sure that we stop calling Khashoggi a journalist, although he wrote for the Washington Post, and talk to him about an agent of Qatar, right? Khashoggi's no day at the beach, right? This does not justify at all what they did to him, but I don't think he's like he's a guy looking to win the Pulitzer Prize, right? That's all phony. Remember, in the Middle East, it's a wilderness of mirrors. You never know what's going on. Tell me before I get to Frank and back to give me an update also on the on Ukraine fatigue among the peoples of Europe rattling these governments right now.
Yeah, well, again, to finish the point I was saying before, when it starts to hit people in their pocket and they have no money, then they start to take notice. But they don't sit down and have debates. They descend onto the town squares and even further than that. Well, so the situation here is that there is dissatisfaction with the ruling elites across the world that is growing ever more. Now, I will talk about Estonia. I also want to talk about India, which so far hasn't been under consideration. But one thing I would like to make a reference to is this article today in the Yahoo Finance, which had a great article precisely on this point, that the EU is stalling on Ukraine aid as fears spike of a gas crisis at home. And this is something that if folks want to read it, they can check out at Steve Bannon, because it's there in the feed. At the very bottom of this article, we have the truth. We have the very lead. Literally, it's in the last two paragraphs. And what is it talking about here? It's talking about the economic clouds, which are going to make the debate of supporting Ukraine more difficult, because the costs of the energy transition and measures to cushion rising prices, that the fear is that the military spending support for Ukraine is going to get caught in the crosshairs. This is the big takeaway from what happened in Rome yesterday with the when Prime Minister Mario Draghi tried to resign, really because of the popular dissatisfaction to the economy because of Draghi's fanatical support of Ukraine. This is the big thing, right? I think the time has now, after 5 months, I think the time has finally run out for Volodymyr Zelensky. When governments start to fall, when prime ministers start to resign, when governments start to lose votes of confidence in their respective parliaments, at that point, self-preservation kicks in. So I think yesterday is going to be the watermark.
We said this, and that's what we told the economists. We've predicted this for forever, and that's why not just what we call accountable when they're trying to avoid the voters. All you're seeing in Italy is a baling wire put on something so they can kick the can down the road and hopefully get the next spring, get through this winter, and next spring face the voters in the more organized. If they had to do it today, all the bombs would be thrown out. It'd be a massive anti-support for Ukraine, anti-Zelensky vote. Just hey, did you hear where this Arizona real estate agent found the home she lived in listed for sale? Hey, the problem was she wasn't selling her home. She was the victim of home title fraud, a devastating crime happening all over the country. According to the expert at Home Title Lock, the crime is incredibly profitable and hard to detect. An identity thief simply fakes a title transfer for your home and refiles it as the new owner. Then he takes out loans on your home or sells it. Typically, identity theft services don't cover you, and neither does homeowners insurance, but Home Title Lock does. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect anyone tampering with your home's title, they help shut it down and help get your home back in your name. Here's what you should do. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and read the testimonials from FBI agents and government officials. Then register your address to see if you're already a victim and don't even know it. And when you protect your home, tell them Steve Bannon sent you to get your free 30 days of protection. HomeTitleLock.com, HomeTitleLock.com, 30 days free protection if you do it today. Hang on, I got Frank Gaffney. Let me just go back to Micahel Yon. I want to make sure he doesn't get arrested. Michael, last about the farmers, the 23rd, they're running up to it. What should people look for between now and then? And your reporting, what do you think are the key building blocks to get to this massive national rally on the 23rd?
My sense is that it's building and the government's trying to quash it down. And one of the things that they're doing to quash it down, you see the inverted Dutch flags. Those are starting to fly in more and more places. You know, the sign of distress, they're flying them over overpasses and on houses and that sort of thing. So the government has cleverly decided that those are a danger they're a physical danger to people. So they've started to remove those from flagpoles and overpass. You can't even make this stuff up, Steve, because every time you photograph one of those things and it goes on Instagram, more Dutch. There's one part of Netherlands that really is kind of not seeing what's going on. They're kind of hermetically sealed. You might not completely sealed, but they're not seeing the news as much because the media here is even more controlled than in the United States. And that's why your war room reporting is becoming very important. I just mentioned to you before, there's numerous members of Dutch Parliament that want to get on War Room because this is you can be their wormhole to reach their audience here. It's unbelievable. So they have to go through the United States, through Steve Bannon and War Room to tell Dutch what's going on.
We're going to use you as a point of contact. Michael, how can people get to you in the United States? How can they follow you? You're on this 24/7. You go to every hot spot in the world, and now the Farmers' Revolt in Holland is one of the big hot spots. It's going to have ramifications throughout not just Europe, the United States, and the rest of the world. How do people follow you?
Hey, Steve, I'm on Getter at Micahel Yon 1776, and I'm on locals.com. And just Micahel Yon, my name. So Micahel Yon 1776 on Getter and on Locals as well.
Michael, you stay safe. Never know what's going to happen over there. Micahel Yon doing amazing reporting from The Hague tonight. Let's bring in Frank Gaffney for a second. Frank, wanted you in here to talk about, we have a special tomorrow with Jerome and Ben and myself called "How to Win the Long War." We're going to give not the economist view. We're going to deconstruct the economist view of this and then talk about our own. But I got to ask you, developments today in Saudi Arabia with the illegitimate Biden regime going and fist bumping MBS, kowtowing to the regime there. Give us your perspective on that before I talk about Ukraine and the great analysis you've been doing about we don't actually have the weapons to fight. We don't have the logistics, and we certainly don't have the supplies to fight a long war. But talk to me about Saudi Arabia. What is your sense of what happened today, and how humiliating is that for the United States?
Well, I think what has happened in Saudi Arabia and more generally in the course of this trip by the president to the Middle East, Steve, is the confirmation of the considerably reduced stature of our country in a very important part of the world. I think what this president has done, as we've talked about interminably, I guess, is a wrecking operation. On domestic policy, on foreign policy. It benefits the Chinese Communist Party. Typically, it hurts us. But in this particular instance, I think what you see in sharp relief is when you treat your enemies better than your friends, you generally get more enemies and fewer friends. And I think that's what you're seeing in Saudi Arabia, which is now, I think, pivoting to some extent to an improved relationship with Israel out of fear of Iran. Not because Joe Biden is engineering that, but despite Joe Biden and what he has done to both of those countries to alienate and even undermine them. But the other party that the Saudis are now very clearly reaching out to and increasingly embracing is the Chinese Communist Party. So this is a very bad trajectory we're on in the Middle East. I think the meetings that Biden has had, again, in Israel with the Palestinians and now with the Saudis, all speak to the fact that the United States is not regarded as the strongest horse, and that's a bad place for us to be.
Gaffney, I knew you'd take a personal insult, but when he can said the Palestinians were like the troubles in Ireland, we'll leave that for another day. There are very few people in our country, Frank, that know more about the Persians, the Iranians, this nuclear deal, their capabilities than Frank Gaffney. Put it in perspective for a second. The Chinese Communist Party cuts a 40-year deal to take essentially their energy output, I think, for $400 billion paid over time. So they're an active partner with the mullahs. Walk through because I think it's very confusing now about what Biden's done, what Kerry's yammering about, where do we stand, and what the mullahs. And you're one of the I remember years ago being up on Capitol Hill at these rallies when Donald Trump first came to rally. It was, Center for Security Policy and Frank Gaffney, one of the leaders. Where are we with the key player in the area, really Iran, in this? And what is this trip shown to our mortal enemies and the greatest existential threat to the state of Israel,
I hope that the Israelis are as skeptical as I think they are of the commitment that the president made formally to use all instruments of American national power to prevent Iran from getting the bomb. And that would be because he's actually using all instruments of American power to assure that the Iranians do get the bomb. The only purpose for that assurance being given to the Israelis is to try to prevent them from preempting what is now imminent. If they don't actually have one or more nuclear weapons, I'd be a little surprised, Steve, to be honest with you. But they're certainly very close to getting them through the various techniques that they've been pursuing, enriching uranium and all the rest of it. What I'm really concerned about is, just as with the Obama administration, the Biden team, which is more or less the same team, frankly, as the Obama team, has been assiduously pursuing from day one the transformation, talk about fundamental transformations, the transformation of the Middle East from one in which the United States plays a key and central role with strong alliances with Israel and more or less strong relationships, at least out of a marriage of convenience, if you will, with the House of Saud and the UAE and Bahrain and a few others in the region, Kuwait. What has been put into place in its stead is an Iranian hegemon, which terrifies everybody else, and understandably so. Look, since they came to power, the mullahs have said two things incessantly: death to the little Satan, Israel, and death to the great Satan, the United States. So when you see that, and you see how they have been, well, not just threatening, but actually attacking the Saudis, mostly through their proxies, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, including with missiles and rockets that we formally were defending them against with our Patriot missiles in Saudi Arabia. But the Biden administration withdrew those. Another sign to the Saudis that they better find other arrangements. And those arrangements are, to the good side, I think, an increasing rapprochement with Israel. They've had at least two meetings, one of which I think at basically the head of state level, the Crown Prince and former Prime Minister Bannon seemed to have met in Riyadh. And there was a group meeting with a number of the Arab states in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt recently. And I think the point of all of that is the Iranians are now at the point where they will become the existential threat we've long warned about. And that has to be addressed. And these guys, I think, are likely to pull together to do that, not with our help, which they should have, and it's not forthcoming. And to the extent that the Chinese are finding a way with the Iranians on the one hand, interesting hat trick, and the Saudis on the other, to insinuate themselves in as the new strong horse in the Middle East. That's not going to be good for America, I don't think, and our interest there.
I got to pivot to Iran. I want to come back next week. We're going to spend more time on Iran because when Frank Gaffney tells me they either got one or they're close to it, a nuclear weapon, it's time for people to take notice. Tomorrow, how to win the long war. The predicate of this article, and I want you to spend a couple of minutes before I go back to Ben, is that a war of attrition is now what the Russians are doing, and we just got to fund. We have to basically back the Ukrainians in essentially a war of attrition. Two things. Well, number one, you've been telling us from day one, we don't have the munitions or actually the weapons to do that and still be able to fulfill our other obligations, like in Taiwan. The Financial Times agreed with you this week, right, and said that. Also, the FBI of the EU, which Ben Harnwell brought up this week, in also in the Financial Times page 1 story, that they're funneling back weapons we're sending them anyway back to criminal gangs in Europe. Give us your assessment of Ukraine as anything to be considered an ally, although I know we don't have an alliance right now where NATO is treating them like one. Give us Frank Gaffney's assessment. Is that a road to win a long war, sir?
Let me just say, Steve, that the concern I've expressed to you on this show many times is we had back in the day, I think notably when I was in the Reagan administration, a strategy of having sufficient capabilities to deal with 2 major conflicts simultaneously. Over time, the peace dividend was cashed in by the Clinton team, by the Biden guys. Before them, the Obama guys have all been weakening tremendously our military. Les Aspin famously had a meeting where he just told the defense industrial base, look, there's just not going to be enough money for you guys to continue being in business the way you are. So consolidate, downsize, and go out of business in some cases. We now no longer even have the capacity to do what we used to say would be the fallback in the post-Cold War world. Maybe we didn't need to have 2 major war fighting, capabilities. We would just have a capability to fight one war, and then if there were another one that would break out at the same time, we'd sort of have a holding action, and we just try to get them to stay tuned until we could finish up the other and come and get them. That entailed a level of ordnance in our arsenal and production capability and deployed forces that we simply don't have anymore. I think we would be hard pressed, quite frankly, especially against a formidable force like that the Chinese are now putting into place, to fight one war against them successfully, decisively. You've talked about this with the 7th Fleet a lot. That means that doing anything with Ukraine is going to be problematic, let alone if we're doing something in a big way with Ukraine and we don't have the assets to do anything about China at all.
Frank, we got to bounce. I want to make sure people get to you on Center Security Policy, the show at 11 o'clock on Real America's Voice, also your social media. And we'll get you back on Monday to talk about the new webinars, but give us all your contacts for over the weekend.
Good. Love to. The show right here at Real America's Voice airs at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a little late in the East, but it's prime time elsewhere across the country. Please tune in there. SecuringAmerica.tv is the website we have to support the show. Securing America is the name of the show. SecureFreedom.org is where you can find the work of the Center for Security Policy, which I think is really important. And of course, our Committee on the Present Danger China resources sponsoring these webinars is presentdangerchina.org. And I'm on all of the social media platforms with Frank Gaffney.
Frank, thank you so much. Ben Harnwell, real quickly, give me your social media tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. How to Win the Long War. The War Room version with Ben Harnwell, Jerome Revere, and Stephen K. Bannon. Ben, real quickly, how do they get to you?
Steve, I'm on Getter exclusively. The profile is at Harnwell.
We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.